Oiza Adaba, journalist, Africa Related, joins me from New York via Skype. Good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
So let me begin the conversation from this hybrid, I think it was a hybrid conference held by UNESCO, I believe, on the World Press Freedom Day. It started on the 2nd and then will end today. Talk to us about, I know you were part of it, so talk to us about the highlights from this conference.
Yes, in celebration of the World Press Freedom Day 2022, the world has convened digitally and also in person at Uruguay to celebrate the World Freedom Day. Now, highlights of the event yesterday, which was the opening ceremony, we had this topic that comes up every year from 1993, when it was first set up by the United Nations after the General Assembly in 1991 to really evaluate some of those issues that you have talked about. And at yesterday's opening ceremony, of course, the UNESCO head of UNESCO, Taoufik Djellisi, also highlighted some of the issues going on in today's world as far as the media is concerned and press freedom around the world is concerned. What are these things that we're talking about, especially in this digital age? We've been made to understand that it's not even just journalism that is under attack in this digital age. It is democracy itself that is under attack. We had the emeritus professor of, I believe her name is Shoshana Zuboff. She wrote The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, and in that book, she highlights all of what has been going on, the diminished powers that big tech has introduced and those in the ecosystem of the big tech, and how also information and data is now the new oil. Scientists and the science itself is owned, and then this has again pushed liberal democracies to the brink, where you now begin to ask a lot of questions around what is actually being done with this data, harvesting this data, behavioral predictions from this data, the sales of this data. And as you can see, the focus this year is on the digital siege on journalists. And in highlighting that as well, it also focused on women journalists and also what they have been going through in between January and May this year alone. I'll tell you that 5 female journalists have been killed, 21 detained, 23 assaults, 15 harassed online, 139 women, threatened, in different parts of the world, all for doing their job. And it's even worse these days because you have surveillance mechanisms in place by companies like the NSO. You have where governments are now buying some of the mechanisms to
absolutely, Oiza. And so I just want to come in because, again, let me make a correction. When I said the conference ends today, it actually ends on the 5th, so it's 2nd to 5th. But let's talk about this in very practical terms. I listened to, I think it was Trevor Noah during the correspondence dinner at the White House in the U.S., where he was talking about the blessing of the press in the U.S., where there is so much freedom, you can hold government accountable. But we also know that even in a country like the U.S., press freedom is not absolute. We cannot say that press freedom is absolute in every country. But when we look at what's going on in Africa or in a place like Russia right now, it buttresses the point of what exactly we're talking about. And I just want to get your assessment of press freedom globally, especially in this digital age.
Mm-hmm. 85% of press freedom has been in descent, according to the UNESCO head, and also 400 journalists have been killed, in the last 5 years. Newsroom revenues have dropped, more than half. Advertising revenues. So it's really relegated to the global newsroom to a point where it's actually at the mercy of big tech, bloggers and stuff, because you find that journalists around the world experience this, where the investigative journalists go through hardship to just bring out some news, and bloggers just pick it up and put it on their websites, and there you go. It goes from there. Monetization of all of these hard work by journalists is actually one of the points also being considered. And it is hoped that at the end of by the 5th, at the end of this conference, they'll be able to bring out some of these recommendations for the global monetarium on data, and what you do with data, and where it goes, and where governments use it for. And also, specifically in the United States, it is not absolute. We did have we went through a pandemic period, we went to an electoral period, and we saw journalism also being threatened during this period. So all of these factors are not related to any individual country, but it's something that you can find worldwide. Yes, it's freer. Trevor Noah can afford to sit in front of President Biden and, roast him right there and then and still be able to walk out. And it is indeed true that you can't do that in many countries.
In most other countries, especially developing democracies, and countries where we have will have a dictatorship as well. But let's look at. This is a very broad issue. The basic thing is, look, the media is supposed to hold the government accountable, but the press freedom is being stifled in most countries. So who then holds the government accountable to ensure that the press is free? And that's a huge question. But I'm told my time is up. I just want to give you a few seconds, 30 seconds to respond to that.
Well, some of these solutions, and hopefully they'll catch on: global moratoriums on assets for tech companies, international regulations, because guidelines and ethics are no longer enough. So international regulations, human rights have to be strengthened both by governments and citizens, and introduction of independent oversight, for high standards. We did this during the arms proliferation and also for landmines. It can also be done for data.
All right, we'll continue to follow. This is a life we live, so we'll continue to follow up on this and see how we progress in terms of press freedom globally. Thank you so much for talking to us, Oiza Adaba, journalist, Africa Related, New York.
Thank you.